Great. To ensure clear communication, please remember to try to speak a little slower than usual so that our interpreters can keep up, and keep in mind that colloquial expressions will be difficult to translate. This event is being recorded, as you just heard, and will be posted online later, so please just manage your participation and your privacy accordingly. So I'm Irene Brisson. I'm an assistant professor of architecture at LSU. I'm a scholar of building culture in Haiti and the African diaspora, and it's my pleasure to be the moderator for today. We'd love to know who's in this virtual room with us. So if you could go in the chat and type a short introduction. Who are you? Maybe where are you situated? Like literally, where are you? Or what is your relationship to the Caribbean or other sites? I'm gonna keep going. Anicia, did you want to take over?
No, go ahead, you're good.
Okay. As you can tell with the Zoom link transfer, we had a slight technical hiccup today, so we're a little refining our footing. So I'll tell you my relationship. I grew up on the central coast of California, which is the occupied homelands of the Ohlone people. My family came from Chihuahua and French Canada and moved north and south, meeting in the United States, bringing me here. I trained as a dancer and an architect, and these paths led me to Haiti following the 2010 earthquake, which is a place where I've really been profoundly educated by the more than 10 years I've spent researching and sometimes practicing, particularly residential construction and architecture in Western and Southern Haiti. I look forward to looking at the chat and finding out where you are all coming from. I co-direct the Caribbean Spatial Justice Lab, founded last year with my colleagues from the School of Architecture, Fabio Capra-Ribeiro and Anicia Street. And we're joined in this initiative by an interdisciplinary group of faculty from LSU and other institutions. And if you are here and you are interested in participating with us, please reach out. You can learn more about our plans at our website, which is still a work in progress, but you can find our basic information. There you go, CaribbeanSpatialJusticeLab.org. So framing this conversation, we understand the Caribbean as a broad region and an archipelagic concept that coincides with other frames that have been used to talk about this region, like the Black Atlantic or Plantation America. And we understand the Caribbean as, the island chain of the Antilles, but also the Gulf Coast of the United States, the coastal regions of South America and Central America, all of which have been connected by long histories of political occupation and by transportation routes and water. The CSJL was founded as a transdisciplinary and collaborative center for research and design concerning the constructed environments of the Caribbean. We are grateful for support from the LSU Provost Big Ideas Seed Grant, the LSU School of Architecture, and really fundamentally our broad network of friends, family, and colleagues, some of whom are here today. It's our hope that we create a transdisciplinary network of scholars, professionals, and organizations that are focused on large-scale issues of the environment and communities in the greater Caribbean region, and believe that we can do this really by building connections and sharing and dialogue like we're going to do today. So this colloquium series is online, specifically to encourage this interdisciplinary and international and multilingual conversation about spatial justice in the Caribbean. And it is intended as a series of introductions and the beginning of dialogues that we hope will last for years. And we've been trying different ways of saying this. I don't want to take Anicia's frame, but any of us who have lived or worked in the Caribbean know that it's not quiet, right? There are nice scholarly ways to talk about this. Glissant says like, language is first, Creole is din. We want to hear from you. So keep talking in the chat. Please ask questions, make comments, drop citations while the speakers are presenting. And then of course, after they present, we'll have a chance to either read out from the chat or to invite you to unmute yourself and participate directly in this conversation. We're going to begin with a presentation by Isabelle Jolicoeur and followed by a response from Fabio Capra-Ribeiro. And we will have 10 to 15 minutes for open discussion at the end. So please throughout think about questions or comments you would like to contribute. So in formal introductions, I want to introduce and welcome Isabelle Jolicoeur virtually to LSU and the colloquium. Isabelle and I met many years ago now in Port-au-Prince, where I think particularly through her work with Haiti PIC and Coup Crayon, two really amazing initiatives to bring people invested in design, architecture, and the built environment together and into dialogue. Isabelle Jolicoeur is an architect, educator, writer, activist, and advocate whose architecture firm is based in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. She holds a B Arc and an M Arc with distinction from the University of Montreal in Canada. She teaches undergraduate level design studios at the Université Quisqueya and resiliency within architecture at Urbater, a master's program led by the State University UAH. She is the founder of IET-PIC, a platform that acts both as a virtual showcase on Haitian creativity, but also an incubator of formative and inspiring initiatives, conferences, workshops, etc., for professionals and the public. She is a registered architect in both Haiti and Quebec, Canada, and has practiced professionally in award-winning practices in Montreal before co-founding the architecture office Atelier Collab. And she has recently been published in Lasso, a space for feminist expression, dialogue, and other platforms as an advocate for architecture. I'm going to go ahead and do the formal introduction for Fabio as well, and then we'll come so we can move straight through, yes? I think this is exciting as one of the co-directors of CSJL. He is always here, always doing the work, but we haven't had a chance in a public way to actually hear about his work. So Fabio Capra-Ribeiro is an assistant professor at the LSU School of Architecture. His research is focused on social, spatial, and environmental justice, with an emphasis on boundary conditions and residual spaces. He holds a PhD in urbanism from the Università IUAV de Venezia in Italy, with an emphasis on urban regions in the global south. An adaptation of his dissertation research has been published as Uncertain Regional Urbanism in Venezuela, Government, Infrastructure, and Environment. He was the director of the School of Architecture, Carlos Raúl Villanueva, at the Universidad Central de Venezuela, and the coordinator of the Master of Urban Design. He developed the Masters of Advanced Ecological Buildings and Biocities at the Institute for Advanced Architecture of Catalonia and taught at the International University of Valencia. Throughout his career, he has taught a wide array of architectural and urban design studios, as well as research methodology and representation courses. So with that, I'm going to stop screen, offer the screen to Isabelle. Take us away.
Can you see the screen and can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Irene, for the presentation. And thank you for this invitation to the Caribbean Perspective Colloquium hosted by the Caribbean Spatial Justice Lab. I really applaud this initiative that allows us to share and exchange our thoughts on provocations, speculations, and many, many thoughts on a more equitable future for the Caribbean. I'm gonna go ahead and see if it changes. It does not. Okay, good. So as Irene said, we met a while ago. My name is Isabelle Jolicoeur. I'm an architect by training, with a bachelor's from Montreal and a master's as well from University of Montreal. This is me on the right. If you don't recognize me, on the left, I cannot start the talk without mentioning Christine, that Irene also knows, Christine Larec, which is my business partner, but also best friend. And together we create Atelier Collab, which is our architecture firm that's based in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, since 2017. So even though we were both born and raised in Haiti, Christine and I were both, if you will, exiled souls. I was living in Montreal back then, and Christine was living in Santiago, DR, in the Dominican Republic. We met in 2016. Actually, we met to collaborate at Typic, which I will talk about later on. And we came together on some other projects very like naturally, and we decided to open our firm 1 year later in 2017, where there was an opportunity for us to participate in a once in a lifetime appel d'offres bid, if you will, for architecture competition for the National Palace in Haiti, which was destroyed back in 2010 when there was the major earthquake. We participated, but we were not chosen. But that didn't stop us. So that's actually the origin story, if you will, of Atelier Collab, or how we started. And when we started our firm, we started to ask ourselves some important questions, right? Like, what would we be about? What we will do differently from the past generations, from our predecessors or elders. And this led to interesting conversation. I like to show this images from Mad Men, a show that I really like. It's actually not that, it's a joke. But it led us to have those interesting conversation and the speculations and inspirations and provocations on what we experience both in different countries and different experiences, and then why we wanted to create in Haiti, which is basically what I wanted to share with you today. Before going any further, some of you already know Haiti, but I want to give a little bit of context on Haiti first, which is our home country. And I always try to explain Haiti or story, what's happening right now. It's really hard to encapsulate in words a truthful context of Haiti, right? Let alone in pictures. Like, what do you show? Do you show picture of beaches? Do you show the recent riots that we have been experiencing? How do you explain the food, the music, the landscape? So all these truths are coexisting somehow, and this is what makes the unique Haitian experience, if you will. So when I try to find pictures to explain and communicate Haiti, what I prefer to do is try to show people. And that's where all these elements are encompassed and live within those people, in community. These are the people that define the Haitian experience that we met along the way when we started this journey. So we've all seen the news, maybe not all, but I think some of you are aware of what's happening in Haiti for the past few years. I have personally lived those news for the past 5 years, and apart from the truly unique Haitian experience, or our story as Haitian is also a story of revolution, of corruption, resiliency, international meddling, and also disasters. It's also a story of never-ending cycle of reactionary post-disaster emergency, which disaster after disaster that happens, whether they're natural or not, repeats the same patterns of false solutions and perpetuates a constant state of emergency that are created or provoked that does not allow for a long-term transformative solutions. And also, like Irene pointed out when I shared that presentation with her, it's also most of the time an excuse to bypass democratic consensus. I also want to talk about the reality of being an architect in Haiti, of being a space practitioner in Haiti, in countries like Haiti, which is one of precarity and also injustice. In Haiti, an architect can easily be replaced by a foreman or a technician at the whim of the client or the conditions or the circumstances. And because of constraints like time and money, or just because of a lack of understanding of the role of the architect, it is a profession that is not regulated or very not a lot. and falls victim to the social, economical instability that we're currently experiencing in Haiti. And more often than not, there's almost never a possibility due to cost, location, quality, that an architect or an engineer would be hired in most cases and most projects. This is an image actually taken from Irene's article, Tracing a Plan in Creole. I don't know how to say it. Tracing a Plan en Creole by Irene, in which she interviewed a boss. So a boss is a technician. We say boss in Haiti for whether it's a mechanical technician or electrical technician, but we say boss. So she interviewed boss Thomas, who explained through this plan his process in the creation of the creation and the execution of a residential building for a client that does not actually live in Haiti, that's in the diaspora. So this is his plan. It's a plan that shows the interior, it shows the column, it shows the structural elements, the interior layout of the future building. In this very case, which is very, very common, a single person replaces both the architect, the builder, but also the engineer, and even more. And in this context, because of the precariousness of that field and the lack of legitimacy also of the profession, it is very common in Haiti for architects to have to resort to the necessity of building themselves. One senior architect told me once after 20 years of practicing that she felt like a glamorized technician, if you will, more than a critical thinker or a space practitioner or a space maker. So this financial precarity forces thinkers to be builders instead. But it's not the only obstacle spatial practitioners encounter in Haiti. I participated in the making of an exhibition that was intended for the Venice Biennale in 2023, but that actually didn't happen, in which we tried to explore that concept of precarity through the lens of all the shortcomings of practicing architecture in Haiti, but also how this precarity could be viewed as opportunities for more creativity and solution seeking. This is actually the cover that we use for our presentation in order to present the exhibition and pitch it and be part of the Biennale. And it's actually a picture of Hervé Sabin. I don't know if Hervé is there today, which is a colleague of mine, also an architect, taking the only mode of transportation he could find to go to one of his sites. This is a bois fouillé. I don't think the person will be able to translate that. It's an expression, which is a traditional handmade boat for fishermen that they use to be able to go to one of his sites. So in short, injustice can also be lack of access to resources, but also in this case, just no access at all, right? And in this conversation that we had between ourselves on how we wanted to be architects in Haiti and how we wanted to have an impact, we had started to build at first and do a little bit of what we already saw other people doing. But one of the first decision to have kind of that shift in thinking that we had was to stop building, because we realized that building didn't allow us for time to think about the users, about the why, about the impact of space and community. Building while being architects made us focus on quickness, on profit instead of impact and inclusiveness, for example. But it was not easy to prove that we could survive as professionals, as space practitioner, only from our critical thinking, being able to convince clients of the added value of architecture without even laying one brick or one block. It was a challenge in itself, more so when we're also being in a emerging undeveloped country, walked with political and social instability, where architecture is actually considered as a luxury. So this is me actually pregnant also in one of our sites that we were supervising, that we actually designed and were supervising the construction back in 2021. And we also have been looking for ways to advocate for architecture outside of the very small architecture community that we're very proud of being part of. And this led us to create Atypique, which is a platform that acts both as a virtual showcase for Haitian creativity, but also as an incubator of formative and inspiring initiatives, such as conferences, workshops, seminars for professionals, as well as for the general public, and which helped us advocating for architecture and also promoting for it and trying to create that bridge between the professional, the practical, and also the general public. This is actually part of the team of Atypique doing one of our biggest events, which was actually the event we organized to present the finalists of the architectural competition that we were not chosen for. So the one that I mentioned earlier, the National Palace, there were 5, I think, finalists, and we decided that it was very important to share those projects with general public, and to be able to talk about architecture in general, with people that were not part of a select group, to talk about architecture. And weirdly, somehow, it never crossed anyone's mind to organize a public presentation of the selected projects for the National Palace, which is the biggest commission, the biggest project you could think of in Haiti, as far as for now. And so we decided in just 3 days, I think we saw the private viewing on Monday and we organized that event specifically on Thursday. So just in a few days, we put together this event. Well, almost all the participants came and presented their proposals, answered the people's questions, and because after all, it was the biggest competition of the country to date for the most symbolic building in the country. This was actually our most attended event, which truly showed that we must introduce the subject of space making and architecture into the public discourse outside of our universities, of high places of thought, and include the people more in these conversations. After all, we're making places for these people. And so for us, Atypique and the events organized within Atypique became another way to be advocates for architecture as community-driven and democratic tool outside of traditional space-making practice. It also became a way to make architecture more accessible to a broader audience and more understood as an effective tool towards a more inclusive society. Christine and I also realized that we had to use our platforms to advocate for things that mattered to us in order to become a vehicle of change. This meant participating in debates, going on the radio, or participate in panels, for example, but that were not only architecture driven or in academic spaces. This also meant for us producing research, content publishing, and taking space and foreign-dominated decision-making in academic spaces. This meant taking up space. This meant taking or grabbing a seat at a table where you're not often not invited, even though you're the main subject of the conversation. This meant being loud, and for me personally, it also meant to write. I always loved writing since a young age, and I didn't quite know what to write. Was it romance stories or things like that? But I find that writing about architecture really merged those two passions together. So it was really important for me to pick up a pen and have a voice. For example, I wrote about how most of the built buildings after 2010, the major earthquake, were created by foreigners while dismissing local architects. The article that I wrote for Post echoed the sentiment of a lot of Haitian architects and allowed me to realize that we cannot speak of space making without talking about power and the influence of external forces. We cannot teach space making without talking about Western meddling and imperialism. And for so long, Haiti, along with so many other disenfranchised countries and territories, had and still has its story written by others, written, rewritten, and edited by others who hold power over them even long after we won our independence back in 1804. This is a painting from Guillaume Letier in 1822 of the nation's ancestors who fought and won the independence war against the French. So this is, and oddly enough, these two major figures that you see on the lower part represent the union of the Black and the Mulattoes, holding the Declaration of Independence in the middle of them, are looked over by a sort of floating white bearded figure that looks a lot like the common representation of God in Christianity. It looks like that figure is approving or even like protecting this alliance and approving this independence, if you will. It was displayed at the National Palace before the 2010 earthquake. It was repaired by experts back in France, I believe, in Paris, and is now displayed at the National Bank of Haiti. It's particularly ironic to me when you know that what ignited the Haitian Revolution that led to our freedom was actually a voodoo celebration that empowered the then slaves to take arms. And this sort of idea of storytelling as a tool of expression, but also self-determination and curiosity has been one of the common thread in our practice, a tool that is important to reappropriate as it has been used to whitewash our history. Back in 2015, I was doing my thesis project at the University of Montreal, which in terms of program was loosely stated as a cultural museum, but it was more a way of staging cultural elements, but not in a confined way, and with the city entering the spaces. And it was not in the means of creating a box in which we would put culture in, but the idea was to display to create a space allowing moments of connection, learning, and experiences for everyone without any discrimination. So the actual orange ribbon that you see represents the idea of the urban fabric of the city weaving through the project that acts like an extension of the city itself. The project was located in Jacmel, which is a city south of Haiti, which is a major city, and that is considered like the cultural capital of Haiti, and where my family on my dad's side is from. And Jacmel is also known as the cultural city of Haiti, which is with the most notable event being the carnival that actually just happened last week. And it is perhaps to me the most impressive yet elusive moment of union, creation, and celebration. Carnival in Haiti is a moment of joy and celebration of life, but also it's the moment of storytelling. With creative medium where the story of figures from the past, whether it's dictators or generals, are told in a playful and yet satirical manner. It is perhaps the only living and acting book of history of Haiti told and acted by Haitians only. This Haitian-made historic performance, because it is a performance in itself, is an unprecedented tool of artistic expression and heritage conservation. Those pictures that I'm showing is actually the work of Corentin Follin, a photographer from Belgium that documented numerous figures and characters that are found in the Haitian Carnival, but more specifically in the Jacmel Carnival. It also showcases the unique Haitian creativity, the tradition of papier-mâché that we have within our Carnival. But what I'm trying to convey with these images is really that moment of unity is there to remind us to view the joy as resistance, joy as justice, but also creativity as resistance and as justice, as disruption of colonial spaces and the actual status quo. And for us, this is how we view our work in the very complex context in which we practice in Haiti. It's a means for us to express ourselves, celebrate creativity as a tool of empowerment, but also self-determination. After all, what is more powerful than Haitians designing for Haitians? To create spaces more equitable and more dignifying by us and for us. And so when I finished my thesis project in the city of the culture, the capital of the culture, which is Jacmel, I really can't count the number of times where I was told that the architecture wasn't Haitian enough. It didn't look Haitian enough. I was told, why don't you design housing, for example, or I know something more useful than a museum. Why a museum? And this idea that art processes, architecture are viewed through a romanticized, naive, condescending, even white gaze that suggests a unique mold of what Haitian architecture should be, but also that oftentimes that narrow-minded view, story, or narrative holds precedence over our own, over the local one. And so on top of the whitewashing of our history that I showed with the picture of God protecting the alliance of the independence, there's also an active writing of our future. And we have seen time and time again with international meddling in Haiti, it is deciding what kind of architecture Haitians deserve, what kind of spaces, what kind of beauty, but also what kind of dignity. And so this idea of storytelling as a creative outlet also speaks to the fact that architecture must be disruptive for us. Just like the Voodoo celebration that ignited the liberation movement and after that the revolution that ended up in our independence. Just like Wakaima was disruptive, or just like the carnival season can also be disruptive spatially in the street and creative at the same time. Creativity for us puts back power in our hands and can bring justice also in the hands of the oppressed. And so with our practice, at times, sometimes it feels vain to draw, it feels vain to dream, it feels vain to design. But we quickly remind ourselves that our mere existence and space into that community of space makers matters, but also could inspire others without our knowing. But also the mere act of creating spaces for Black bodies, marginalized bodies, and so on, for them to live, to prosper, and to thrive matters. In addition to advocating, like we try to do, writing, like I try to do, and teaching also, like Christine and I, we both do, it's in itself disruptive. And so when we have our moments of doubts, in moments of precarity, because like I try to explain, architecture, being an architect in Haiti is also a story of precarity. While we try to survive as professionals, we also try to remind us that the act of creating itself and space making are also political acts of resistance and self-determination. And one of the things that we realized that we wanted to have a bigger impact in our projects. And we realized that we had to become advocates of architecture, not only with space making, not only with only the footprint of a building, but to have a greater impact. And we realized it had to be in people and into the transmission of knowledge and the creation of a new generation of creatives modeling a new way. And so this both led us to teaching. I know Christine taught before that. She taught in the DR, so she always had this in her. But for me, it was brand new. I realized that I like teaching, and this is me with some of my students from University of Kitria back in 2021, I want to say. It's kind of hard to see when I'm there. I look like one of the students, but I'm actually there on the right. But by teaching, it wasn't lost on us that the making of spaces is generally a field dominated by men, right? With heteronormative values and also over the age of 30. And none of the things we were women, we were young, and we didn't fit into that profile. And the same goes for architecture education, a system within a system, if you will. This is an image from École des Beaux-Arts on the left, and on the right, it's a pictures of the founders of l'École Libre Professionnelle, which will eventually become the Faculté des Sciences, the first public architecture and engineering faculty of the country. And so if the white gaze held precedence over the local one, it is evident that effects of local patriarchy would also be reflected in the pedagogy of architecture itself. And part of a practice which we're navigating between the academic world, teaching, and also practicing architecture with both private and institutional clients. Part of our practice is also addressing this divide within the scope of our practice. This is one of the examples of the writings that I did. I wrote for Alanso, the first edition. And in it, I spoke to the fact of being a woman in public space. And I recounted how I was one day in a very short dress in the streets on one of the most violent days of the last 5 years in Haiti, and how it made me reflect on the place of the woman in the city, and also how this experience and many more after inform the way we practice architecture as well. But also this type of questions should inform space making in the architectural pedagogy. And I also reflected in another article on how the phenomenon of insecurity had shaped our architecture into an architecture of fear that does not distribute or allow space for everyone equally. But rather, it was a construction of fear. It did not allow space for architects or the voices of architects, urbanists, and designers that are often put aside and even called into question sometimes as to why are they even needed at all. And personally, I'm a strong advocate of all creative disciplines, and especially architects and planners, because fear remains a primary force to maintain domination, to ensure obedience and compliance. And then we try to minimize the importance of architects or planners. And it becomes ironic and ironically convenient for donors in the international community in general to say, and it has been said a lot back in 2010, oh, well, there are no architects in Haiti anyway, so we just should lead the church, and which is exactly what happened and with all the reconstruction efforts and what happened after. I don't know who said this, but when something is decided without you, it's decided against you. And we've all seen the results of the international committee leading the charge for reconstruction in Haiti, with millions of dollars disappearing or just poorly managed. Spatial justice speaks also about holding power politically into the allocation of resources for space making, which we don't often talk about, and the overlook, removal, or simple minimization of local spatial practitioners allows the spatial techniques of control of the population, including the use of terror, but also what I call calculated chaos. But most importantly, these efforts to replace, disembody, or minimize the need for architects or spatial practitioners in order to allow meddling and control over the acts of allocating, containing, policing, withholding, and creating spaces for bodies, Black bodies, to live in or exist within, have allowed for what I call this engineered chaos that has become a sort of tool to control the territory and consequently the population, and make the city, instead of a place of exchange, it's a place of promenade, a place of fear, and a divisive place worsening the vulnerability of women or marginalized people, instead of diminishing their vulnerabilities. A place that is less fair, spatially, a place that is less inclusive. This is what we call barricade in Haiti. I don't know how the translator is going to translate that. You can just say barricade, which is just a mix of burning tires and other obstructions that are meant to block a street or a pathway or just a road, that when used strategically in areas when there is no planning, so no architects or no urban planners, in places that are built by people, entire areas can be cut off from the rest of the territory, since only one access serves them. During days, sometimes weeks, entire populations were therefore cut off from the rest of the city, but also from the services provided by the state. I'm thinking when you block a road like that, you block access to ambulances, police, firefighters, everything. but also those people that were blocked from the services were not able to obtain water, food, or the supplies. So these are the same streets that host the carnival I mentioned earlier. And it is literally the same space that is either disrupted by joy and creativity, or that is used as a means of control and fear. Being a woman practicing Haiti has also led me to reflect on Haitian architecture that has often been an architecture of domination, expressing power and authority in a very classicist way. Moving forward and leading forward also means understanding our past first and how it influences our present. These are images of 4 consecutive national palaces that Haiti has known. So between the year of 1749 and 2023, two palaces were lost to earthquakes, 2 palaces were lost due to an explosion, one of which was of a criminal origin, and 2 sites were lost by an earthquake and a fire. So this speaks a lot to the fact that buildings bear the traces of our very chaotic turbulence history, but also our vulnerability to natural disasters. Oops. And it is a typology that is often duplicated until today. This is the Cour Supérieure des Comptes, a building that is part of the reconstruction effort after the 2010 earthquake. It was built in 2019 by the Taiwanese government and is based on an exact duplicate plans from Taiwan, I believe. It is supposed to be a symbol of justice because it houses the officials that make sure that the deals and affairs within the country are made with transparency and ethics. It is the equivalent, if you will, of the Supreme Court in the United States. So this is what is deemed as setting the tone for the new architecture or the new reconstruction effort in Haiti, and specifically for the Cité Administrative, which is the lower part of downtown Port-au-Prince that was being rebuilt after the earthquake. That's something that really draws from the previous typology that we've seen of National Palace, of really a typology of domination, of authority, and something that doesn't really link or speaks or have a dialogue with the historic downtown part of Port-au-Prince. And so this is why I think it's important to view architecture studios in the context of architecture education as place of unlearning first, before learning. Unlearning typologies, and unlearning biases, prejudices, asking questions instead of making statements, and a place to disrupt the status quo, disrupt the existing colonial spaces, typologies, and space-making systems. What should a justice palace look like, feel like? Where should it be located? Should it be accessible to all? Should it be should there even be a justice palace? These are the questions that we should be asking within with a pedagogic view, if you will. So these are a couple of work from students from the University of Kiskia, where they were encouraged to discover new forms, new typologies, and question the very notions of construction and architecture. Not only as volumes to be seen, which is something that we oftentimes do in architecture pedagogy in Haiti, volumes to be seen and to be part of the urban fabric, but inclusive spaces to be lived in, to be experienced, and addressing real issues affecting a contemporary Haitian society. And coming back to the idea of replicating century-old typologies, right, and viewing space through the lens of construction instead of to the lens of architecture and space making and symbols of power. One time, one of my students in the master's program asked, what can we do to not let it come to that? How do we stand up to an architecture that is focused on community, identity, inclusiveness, and an architecture that is actively pursuing question, but also dismantling systems of oppression or marginalization, instead of a built architecture that replicates old models of expression of power and domination, directly heredited from those we pretend or we believe that we are freed from. First, we must understand that we cannot speak of space without talking about the accumulation of wealth and power, and more broadly, what it means to advocate for community over power, advocate for performance. So what does a space accomplish, instead of what it looks from the outside? And identity over the aesthetic of power, which are in this case I hate them, the classical columns on everything. All in all, we cannot separate space making from politics. And all this speculations, thoughts, and provocation can inform how we view pedagogy, and specifically pedagogy in architecture. This is I participated in the Loud Readers workshop in Puerto Rico last year, and this is the curriculum that I presented, which is the current architecture curriculum of the university in Haiti. It may or may not be the university where I myself used to teach. This curriculum dates from 1995. From my knowledge, it has never or very little never been changed, modified, rectified, or updated. It is curriculum primarily focused on algebra and drawing technique. And the thought process that I was trying to have is that these 2 pages, this curriculum has shaped more than 5 generations of architects, going through 28 years of hurricane season, at least 2 oppressive governments or 2 dictatorship, 2 major earthquakes, an emerging climate crisis that we're actually living in, and a myriad of other social, economical, and political events that have shaped and impacted the community. So these 2 pages have also formed and shaped architects that are actually practicing right now. So it actually participated into the shaping of space making and urban policies and public building and so on since 1995 without one single change. And this is something that we should question and that we should point at. And so during that first edition of the Loud Readers workshop that I participated in, my proposal was to ponder on the pedagogy and the spatial practice education in the Caribbean region in general, but more specifically in Haiti. And we think what should be a curriculum for space making as a tool for spatial justice, inclusiveness, and self-determination. This was in no way a means to recreate a practical curriculum right now and then, but instead to ponder on what it means to be a spatial practitioner in this day and age with all the specificities of the Caribbean region and the cultural nuances. What would a space-making curriculum that would be human-centered, performance-focused, and taking into account the multiple layers of the Caribbean region of identity and vulnerability look like? What issues are usually overlooked, not included? How can other practices inform the practice of architecture? And so it was really amazing because we had discussions in groups, and each group offered critical thinking and thought-provoking perspective on what it means to create space in these conditions. And they actually did these like collage and presentation, presenting their thoughts on how to create space in these conditions, on the political, anthropological, and social implications. In the presentation of the attendees, conceptual as colonial footprint, patriarchal gaze, social and spatial inequities, technology and tools, place and identity, power and hierarchy, climate change were also addressed as part of a new curriculum. It was also for us, so these are kind of the notes that everyone took. It was also for us an opportunity to rethink the format and methodology of transmitting knowledge and critical thinking tools from one individual to another. So in studio, we always have that, that that master apprentice relationship. So it was an opportunity also to review that hierarchy and the dynamics of the studio environment. Sorry, this is a lot of talking for me. So in a way, the live reading workshop itself served as a sort of mock-up pedagogic, transdisciplinary, horizontal, and inclusive learning environment. It echoed the sentiment of wanting to reinvent, provoke, and speculate on the way things are done today and offer a new pedagogic alternative. And I just wanted to show, I went and searched for pedagogy, the origin, and I really like the fact that it's both child and leader. So it made me think about the intervention of Mark Raymond that also spoke at the Loud Readers Trade School in 2023, who spoke a few times about transformative pedagogies and this notion of mapping and interrogating other sources of knowledge like anthropology to inform the creative process. And for me, this links back to storytelling and the way storytelling is a form of pedagogy in itself and a learning access, but also a means to lead, to transform for a better future. And so I always end with this question because I like to end with a question instead of a statement. The main question that comes back is, what does it mean to create space? To critically think about the allocation of bodies in space in Haiti or more broadly in the Caribbean region. I still don't have a clear answer. I hope that maybe we can together come with an answer or even more questions and issues to address in order to move forward to more just and inclusive spaces. That is all for me. Thank you for everyone for listening to my voice slowly fading away. I look to everyone's comments. Thank you.
Hi, bravo. Thank you so much. Thank you, Isabelle. There's so much in there. I'm really excited to get to Q&A. Straight to Fabio, who's going to very quickly give us another site to put into dialogue, like what's happening in the chat, right? We have these parallel streams happening in so many places in the world. Okay.
Do you want me to stop sharing?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes, perfect. I wanted to talk from another corner in the Caribbean. I'm echoed with the experience and the words of Isabelle, both in the profession and also in the education, in the training in architecture. I just want to talk in 10 minutes and to tell you about my experience in Venezuela. And I would like to put you into context because when we are talking about the situation of Venezuela in other countries, it is seen as a country that is rural, and in the contrary, it's not rural. More 95% of the population lives in cities. We have a lot of in cities, of big cities. It's a very dynamic country, and the profession of architecture is seen different. We see different situations in Venezuela. It has to do with the construction, with the building, with the formal building, for example, as you can see here, where we take measures, security measures, that are more or less correct, and we have a more or less advanced machinery that it could be seen in other first world cities. But then when you go into everyday life, everyday practice of the medium and smaller firms of architecture in the local governments, when you see everything that has to do with building and construction, it's a very handmade practice, artisanal, and we take very few security or safety measurements without this meaning that there's a reduction in quality, but maybe the people, the participants, the workers are put into risk. And something else that I would like to mention in the Caribbean and in many countries of the third world is that we have self-built areas, as we can see in the picture, self-constructed. And we see here the quality of construction. And it's really, as we have a great industry, a big industry of construction, they go back to their houses. The workers that work in construction can learn a lot when they work at their jobs, and then they go back to their own houses and they do themselves, they construct, they build their own houses. And bricks, metal, everything needed for construction is really cheap in Venezuela. So they have a lot of material. So our buildings are really heavy because as we have lots of earthquake problems, so we need to take into account the material we're going to use in this building. And another layer of the professional exercise, what happens from the beginning of this century that has to do with the government, those that should be in charge of planning and intervening, understanding the context in order to plan the cities, they do the other way around. They do just the opposite. They do a very poor architecture, not only from the architecture, but also from the design. We don't understand, it's not considered which is the concept of city, where, for example, you put in the ground floor, you put a wall that doesn't have sense with the type of city that we have in Venezuela as the garden cities that Caracas is being developed. So those layers are also seen in education, in training. I will talk about the architecture school that is the biggest one in the country, and it's developed in this spectacular building that has been built in the half of the 20th century for Villanueva constructed this building, and he was trained in the Le Corbusier architecture school and adapted what he had learned to the ecosystem and the context of Venezuela. And that always surprised me because it was not seen in the modern masters, modern teachers of modern architecture, because sometimes what you see is standardization of the solutions. But what you can see here is something that is really adapted. It's tailored for Venezuela. Here you can learn a lot as an architect, but what happens inside of this building is something that it's very handmade, and they don't have the support, the financing, the budget that is needed. So the quality of the education and the conditions are they become poorer and poorer. For example, I have another conference here in another context that is much formal, but as what is happening now, we have just few elements to be able to give this lecture and at least to make it understood. And what you can see here, we have a view of the mountains. We have a crossed ventilation that is really positive, but what happens inside, it's really precarious. The space where we teach, where the project workshops, the architecture project workshops are being taught, are very different to what happens in other schools from the rest of the world. Instead of each student having a space for each one of them, the teacher sits with all the students and they review everything that they are doing, and everyone participates in the discussion. It's not something personalized. The students don't have the opportunity to work. They only listen to the professor. They have to find a place in order to work, for example, to take their computer and to take all the materials that it's not being offered by the university. And the interaction of the cross relationships among students and teachers are being done in these spaces that are much more flexible. And this brings spontaneous conversation and discussions that is not part of the curriculum. And then in the most precarious and the most poor parts of the education is that we don't have enough budget. We don't have enough funding. And there was no maintenance of the spaces, neither cleaning nor painting. So the students gathered to clean their spaces, also cleaning the bathrooms, the restrooms of the building. And of course, they had also very poor hygiene and safety measurements. And this shows that less the university gives you, more you have to put from your side, and you have to give more from you to lead all the activities forward. And this teaches students to, I mean, a lot of things and a good experience for the future, but it's not the best way to learn. Maybe in these chaotic instances, when we have presentations of the architecture projects, everyone, including the students, they are well dressed. The posters, the flyers that they are showing, their presentation are being well done. Everything is in place. And that is something that I found amazing, because it doesn't have that tropical image that we can think about. And the discussion of the architectural projects in school becomes an event, not only for the school, for the university, but for all society, all the city. Some architects and some students that finish their studies come back to the school and try to participate, and there's movement when these architecture projects are being presented. Another thing that I would like to mention from another geographical point of the Caribbean, from that that Isabelle was showing, how precarious, how poor this characteristic can develop the profession, or can be a sign for the architecture. At the same time, when that curriculum was shown, that never changed, and trained lots of architectures, and we are not sure how that happened, because they prepare them to face the future. And here we see something similar, with still train architectures that when they face problems and issues, they can solve situations in the best manner.
Wow. All right. Thank you so much. So with 20 minutes, I'm going to ask one question and ask Isabelle and Fabio to respond. And then let's open it up. So please be thinking about a question. The trouble is I have like 8 questions. I want to acknowledge, I think there's some really interesting background that I was thinking about, in that both of you have left your countries of origin and returned and left, to pursue higher education, which is something that we see definitely across the Caribbean and really the global South, right, where we have people who are intellectuals or professionals with expertise who are moving knowledge back and forth, right, between where you've come from and really like formal, the metropoles, the places which colonize the very places in question. So that's not a question, that's just like a grounding I want to put on the table. This word, I felt like the word we might have said the most was justice, but then the next was precarity. And I don't know why last night it occurred to me to ask like what the etymology of precarity is, which I thought was really enlightening, because it is about basically being at the will of another, right? Like it is instability, but it's not just, being off balance, it's being off balance because of external structures. And I think that speaks a lot to spatial practices and urbanism in Port-au-Prince and Caracas, like what all of these challenges, financial and political, that you're talking about, that prevent maybe or impede architects and spatial practitioners from acting. Okay, we're coming up to a question. I feel like, so what is architectural pedagogy, and what is architectural practice in these states of precarity? I mean, I think you both already started to answer, but let's do it again, because I think this thinking about the future when one is in a state of instability without access or with limited access to self-determination, it's hard to think through this. So can you reflect on this?
I would say that it's not just about acting, it's about thinking. I find myself not be able to think. So when you're in constant state of survival and that state of precariousness, I think it doesn't allow for space for you to think and to question and to be able to unlearn and question the status quo. Why is this? Why are we doing something like that? Why is it always been like that? Right? To be able to question, you're just in the mode of surviving every day, the day by day, and it does not allow for us to have a transformative pedagogy and to be allowed to change things. So I think that's the main thing. You're not even to a point where you're talking about acting. You're just talking about thinking and having that space, that mental space to think, but not only mental spaces, but also physical spaces. So I talk about with my students, and they basically oftentimes don't have that physical space to be sheltered from everything that's happening outside, the chaos, the instability. The university should be like a refuge, like a shelter, providing resources, physical space, in order for them to be in a mental space to be able to think and not just do. There's a propensity to just do things, like you do your homework, you just want to go to the next year and just go on. But I think there's something to just stopping and then thinking and then trying to dismantle, unlearn. And I'm not talking only for students for them to unlearn, but myself too. I think I'm being very transparent when I teach, and I say I'm teaching and I'm learning with you. I'm learning how to be a teacher because I didn't go to school to teach. I was just practicing, and then I started teaching. So I'm also learning. So this is a place for me to have that mental space to think and be like, what am I teaching? What am I transmitting? So yeah, that would be a first answer for me.
On my behalf, I would say that the main characteristic, at least in my experience, of this issue of precarity, specifically in teaching, is that students understand that they are not expecting the institution to provide anything to them. They are not expecting anything from the institution because they know that no one will give them anything. So you enter the system in a thinking mode where you know that you must invest twice or 3 times as much energy for any process, basic process of teaching, things like getting a book or getting a reference or architecture building, important examples, etc. That which for many of our students, is something automatic that happens at 2 clicks. You know that over there you will spend hours, you need to talk to people. It's like building a path that should already be built for you, but that you have to do it. So before getting to the learning, let's say, what the content of a class is, first you need to learn how to self-learn to make your path to get there. So your time is divided, and obviously that emphasizes the other topics that we've been dealing with of injustice. Injustice, because those who are more wealthy and the ones who don't have so many resources, when the institution doesn't provide you so many resources, that is emphasized, or because everything depends on the person and there is no framework provided to them.
Great. Thank you, Fabio and Isabelle. And I'm going to echo, you know, what Irene said earlier. There's so much here, and the questions, thoughts being pondered. I try to put my thoughts in the chat so that I can give space to our audience to join in on in the conversation. If you have comments or questions, I see one hand up already, and if we can follow that same format, if you have a question or a comment, go ahead and raise your Zoom hand. But we're opening it up now for our attendees to ask questions. So Machiko, would you like to start us off?
Yes, hi everybody. Thank you so much for all the reflections on our shared realities. I wanted to add to the last part of the conversation with the precariousness within the tropical context. To what Isabelle was saying, that when you teach that the university there is no shelter, or like a physical or mental shelter. In my case, and I know this was the case for many of the people who I went to school with, the university was the shelter from the reality. It was your pause to say, listen, everything is, you can do it all. There is a way here. It was the actual space where you had, for lack of a better word, the safe space to tap into those conversations, to reflect on those realities that otherwise, as soon as you literally left the building, you could get robbed or whatever, which I also experienced myself. So as soon as you step out, like you said, you're in survival mode. You're like, all right, we got to do some grocery shopping. We got to, figure some things out. So I would add that even though it is in the shelter in the sense to provide the actions or to come up with the resources to solve those realities that we have, in some ways, it was a big shelter for everybody who attends. And adding to what Fabio mentioned, 2 things that I wrote down. It is true that at least in Venezuela, in our university, that mindset is there. From the very first moment you apply to go to that university or any university, you know exactly what you're getting yourself into, yet you decide actively to do it because circling back in a beautiful way, it will be your shelter. It is your green light to actually sit and think and ponder upon things and concepts and analyze and come up with solutions, even though they may not materialize, which is the sad part of the reality. And then adding to the precariousness of the spaces, of the pictures that Fabio showed that I know far too well of those realities, I think the tropics and the Caribbean, it is our blessing and our curse is being in the tropics, for me, I feel, for many of the realities, because you have beautiful weather all around, except for those obviously supernatural storms and all the things we've known, and earthquakes. But I think that is the beauty of the precariousness. It is enabled by our blessing, which becomes our curse, because then we become precarious, because there is room to be precarious. It sounds contradictory, but I don't know if I'm explaining myself. That's what I wanted to add. And thank you so much for both presentations. I really, really enjoyed them.
Thank you, Michiko, for your comments there. Your first earlier comments sort of took me back to reflecting on how I grew up. I always said I went to the best school in the country in the most dangerous part of the country. And so certainly a condition of, precariousness and duality there that, is a sort of a constant, you constantly have to navigate, sort of growing up in spaces that, we all share in terms of that background. All right, I'd like to ask if there are any more questions. Isabelle, would you like to comment again?
Yes, I wanted to say that to kind of jump back on that, what I often witness while teaching is that there's a systemic pedagogy in Haiti that's in place that is based on hierarchy and authority, which means that students are often waiting to hear what they should do, or being told what they should do, because since primary school, high school, they've been told what to do. You should repeat the sentence over and over again, and you should not question it, So it's already embedded in the way we teach, and then it goes on to higher education in some ways, not all classes, of course, but this way of hierarchy. That's why I said we question the master and apprentice relationship. Like, I don't really see myself as a master teaching to my students when I teach to them. I see us as exchanging and just talking, but there's already that relationship embedded systemically in the way that we teach in Haiti, which leads students to just do what they're being told to do, which means that if you're doing a project, most of the time when I start my class, students just wait for me to say, what's my style? Do I like columns? And they'll just do whatever I like to have that grade. It's just so embedded in a way of doing that. That's why I said that for me, it's a place to unlearn first and then ask questions and go further, but it's so embedded. They're so used to just do what they're being told to do and then repeat. And this is how we're repeating old typologies, repeating biases, repeating discrimination through space. This is how those old systems are being duplicated and repeated. So yeah, I think sometimes we have to review the whole system and then trying to dismantle it. And this is something that can also make it so that space is not a shelter. It's just I don't know. You're just passing by and just what you're being told you're doing, and then you're getting your grade and you're passing by. I want the university to be that. Like, I'm happy to hear that others are experiencing that, but for Haiti, for Haitian students learning architecture and learning other things, to I want it to be that physical sheltering space, that mental space where they can take a breath and they can question and they can question everything, you know, question the very curriculum that they're being imposed. Question, why am I taking that class? Question, is that class really necessary in 2024, you know? And I also mention what I call the activism muscle, something that we lost in Haiti because of dictatorship, because of years of oppression. You know, you're being told. My parents used to tell me, like, don't say anything. You know, you don't want to sound like an activist. Like, it's a bad word. It's still a bad word now. So for me, I'm activating my activist muscle to question, to ask why, you know, and sometimes it annoys people a lot, I know, but I like to annoy them because we need to activate that muscle, and the new generation needs to activate that muscle to question everything, so for us not to repeat the same mistake that we did.
Wonderful. Thank you, Isabelle and Fabio. We'll have to find some continuing channels to follow up, you know, with these questions and comments, which we will have further opportunity. But before I close us out, I just want to thank everyone here for being on the call with us today. Thank you so much again, Isabelle and Fabio. I was sort of pondering the time that, you know, we're in, and we actually, you know, we just came out of carnival season, so this is very timely, right? And we'll continue to talk about, you know, these ideas going forward. But I want to just make sure to share with everyone, and let me share my screen really quickly here. Our last two colloquium sessions that are upcoming. So on Friday, March 22nd, so students, when we come back from spring break, we're going to activate those muscles again. We're going to get things going again. Colloquium number 5, our presenter will be Damien Hines from Hines Architecture and Design. He is originally from Jamaica, but also practicing here in the US. So that promises also to be another riveting discussion, in addition to our last session, which we'll have presenter Professor Michael Lipoy from OCADU, and Lipoy Design representing Trinidad, and he also is based in Canada. So please come back and join us so we can continue this conversation. And I'll ask Irene and Fabio, last things you want to say or offer? We're good?
Beautiful. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you for the upcoming colloquium sessions.
All right. Merci.
Bye, guys. Merci.
Thank you to our
Yes.
interpreters who are doing a wonderful job.
Yes, thank you so much. Much appreciated.
Bye, everyone.